Can the soul see its own funeral? Does it watch in silence? As names are spoken, tears fall, and truth emerges beneath whispered prayers. What if the soul, moments after death, lingers, not to haunt, but to understand? This question, ancient and hidden, has echoed through mystical visions, near-death testimonies, and sacred traditions. Some say the soul observes its final goodbye, and what it sees changes everything. Who truly weeps? Who avoids the gaze? Who brings roses, and who brings repentance? This is more than curiosity, it is a revelation between the seen and unseen, and once you understand what the soul witnesses, you may never attend a funeral the same way again. Welcome to Bible Stories and Mysteries. Subscribe, like and share if your spirit seeks the silence between this world and the next. It begins not with thunder, but with a breath that never returns. In that final exhale, time folds. The room does not change, but the soul does. One moment lungs fill with fading air, the next a strange stillness presses against eternity. There is no pain, no speech, no body to control, only the sacred confusion of being awake without weight. The mystics called it the silencio vivo, the living silence, a presence that wraps around the spirit the moment it detaches. It is not the silence of death, but the beginning of something louder than sound. A hum beneath creation, a spiritual echo calling the soul home. And in that silence, something happens. The soul sees. It opens eyes not made of flesh, and suddenly it watches. It watches the body, still warm but empty. It sees the room, the walls, the ceiling, the faces, but from somewhere just beyond. Floating, not flying. Present, but unseen. Alive, yet dead. There is no instant understanding, only a dawning, like the slow unfolding of dawn after the long night. The soul senses it has crossed, and yet the world continues. A mother cries, a nurse whispers, a monitor flatlines. Life does not notice the soul leaving, but heaven does. Some souls feel peace, a deep, oceanic calm, as if carried by wings made of light. Others feel fear, not of darkness, but of what they forgot to make right. There are souls filled with awe, and souls frozen in shock. Is this me? They ask. But the mouth no longer moves, the hands no longer reach. The voice becomes thought, and thought becomes prayer. And then they are not alone. For some, a presence stirs, soft, radiant beyond language. A warmth like fire that doesn't burn, angels perhaps, or ancestors, or simply the spirit, brooding over the threshold. The soul, half in this world and half in the next, senses it. Something holy has entered. Here there are no clocks, no shadows, no explanations, only awareness, the beginning of the real. This is not the end. It is the sacred unmaking before the eternal becoming. If you've ever felt a silence that wasn't empty, a pause that felt like presence, comment the word stillness, and share this if your spirit has ever brushed against eternity and paused to wonder. There is a moment, sudden and terrible, when the soul sees itself from the outside. It hovers just above, still tethered to what was once familiar. Below lies the body, a shell, a garment folded and left behind. The hands are still, the mouth slightly open, and the soul watches, not with horror, but with aching disbelief. The face is known, yet now it belongs to no one. I am here, the soul cries inwardly, but that is me. It tries to speak, but no sound forms. It tries to move, to touch, to breathe again, but movement no longer belongs to it. This is the first grief of the afterlife, not death itself, but disconnection, the unbearable beauty of still being, while nothing around responds. In this suspended hour, the soul walks circles around its own form. It does not blink because it has no eyes. It does not sit because it no longer has weight. It only observes, drawn by something deeper than curiosity, recognition. And then, slowly, the soul understands. The body was never it, just a door, a robe, a name written in dust. Some souls weep, not from their eyes, but from their essence. They remember every scar, every joy written in muscle and bone. They remember the pain the body carried, the laughter it knew, the hands that once held others. And now it rests. The soul aches, not to return but to honor. Others feel sudden freedom, like a veil torn from their sight. The suffering has ended. The struggle is no more. No disease, no age, no limits, just presence. And yet, even in this holy release, a question echoes. Who will remember me rightly? There is no mirror in the afterlife, only this moment, staring at the body that once carried a soul, staring at the face once reflected in glass, and now reflected in memory. And then the shift begins. The soul starts to see more than the body. It sees the room, the door opening, footsteps approaching, a heartbeat quickening, not its own, but someone still alive. The funeral has not begun, but the watchers are arriving. Pause here and feel it. If you've ever stood at a grave and whispered, "Can you see me?" comment the word "remembered" and pass this on to someone who carries the silence of a goodbye. The door opens and the soul watches, invisible, as the living arrive. There is no trumpet, no herald, only footsteps. Slow, uncertain, sometimes reluctant. A few enter with trembling reverence. Others come with downcast eyes, glancing once, then looking away. Some sit in silence. Others busy themselves with rituals, not knowing they're being seen by the one who is gone. The soul, still near, recognizes each face, the ones who loved deeply, and those who merely came. There is no judgment, only awareness, a sacred seeing, who weeps and who pretends, who lingers beside the coffin and who avoids the gaze. There is a pain deeper than sorrow, the ache of being near and unable to be known. One arrives slowly, hand clutching a single flower. The soul leans in, remembering her scent. Another stays at the edge of the room, unwilling to come closer. The soul remembers why. Every arrival carries weight, not in footsteps, but in memory. The past enters with each one, but the greater ache is absence. The ones who should have come, don't. A brother who left long ago, a friend whose silence never healed. The soul waits, hoping, sensing the space that should be filled. Not for vanity, but for closure. There is no anger, only longing. The soul does not demand, it remembers. And still, it sees more than faces. It sees gestures, a trembling hand on wood, a whispered prayer, a look exchanged in silence. Even in the physical, spiritual messages passed between the mourners, some touch the body with love, others can't bear to look. And the soul, floating just beyond reach, absorbs every detail. The unfinished threads of life stir here, words never spoken, wounds never healed, and yet there is a peace even in this. The soul no longer needs anything, but it feels everything, every presence, every absence, every love, and every hesitation. If you've ever attended a farewell and felt someone unseen standing near, comment the word "present" and share this with one soul you wish had stayed. The room is full, and yet no one sees the most present one among them. The soul remains silent and watching, moving without walls, seated in no chair. It stands beside the casket and walks behind the mourners. It listens, it lingers, it hovers near the ceiling, drifting between sighs and whispers, and not one among them notices the nearness of eternity. Candles flicker, flowers fill the air with fading perfume, psalms are read, faces shift between sorrow and ceremony. But the soul sees through them all, not to judge, only to understand. The rituals mean something now, not as custom, but as final conversation, a liturgy of goodbye, There are moments when the veil thins. A child looks up suddenly, as if catching a movement in the air. An elderly man pauses mid-prayer, eyes moist with something deeper than grief. A mother trembles while touching the hand she once held at birth. These are not coincidences. These are echoes of presence. The soul aches with love, but cannot console. It leans toward the weeping, not to interfere, but to feel. Every tear falls into eternity. Every word spoken in truth is heard. The soul listens more deeply now than it ever could while breathing. This is the paradox of death. The dead become more alive to the truth, and yet the room feels hollow, not because it lacks people, but because the soul can no longer fill it the way it once did. The space between hearts is vast. The words are many, but not all carry weight. Some arrive out of duty, others out of love. The soul knows the difference. In this unseen nearness, something else stirs, a gentle presence beside the soul. Not human, not earthly, light without form, a watcher of watchers, a sign that this is not the end, only a passage. The funeral room becomes a sanctuary of thresholds. The living face loss, the soul faces revelation, and heaven watches both. Sight fades, but knowing deepens. The soul no longer sees with eyes, it senses. It no longer listens with ears, it absorbs. Every emotion in the room rises like incense. Every hidden thought pulses in the air. The soul moves among the mourners and feels not their words, but their hearts. Some approach the coffin with trembling lips and say nothing, yet their presence cries louder than any speech. Others speak long eulogies, but the soul feels no warmth behind the words. It is not bitterness, it is simply the truth now laid bare. Death unmasks, and the soul cannot turn away. A woman kneels and prays, and the soul feels her longing, not for the dead, but for forgiveness. A man touches the casket and memories flood him. Laughter, anger, absence, regret. The soul, invisible, leans near, not to answer but to hold the moment with him, to witness what only heaven can. Then come the silent ones, those who stand with still eyes and folded arms. The soul cannot read their thoughts, but feels the weight of what remains unsaid. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, the soul feels a sudden jolt of love from someone it never expected. A presence that once felt distant now shines like fire. There are ripples. Someone trembles without knowing why. Another turns suddenly, sensing something just behind them. These are not imagined. They are soul recognitions, brief touches across the veil. The spirit, still tethered to earth, reaches out in longing. Some receive it, others close themselves and never know they were seen. And through it all, the soul tries to give what it can no longer speak. A feeling, a comfort, a memory stirred at the right moment, a peace that rests on someone's shoulders. The soul cannot change anything now, but it can bless. And sometimes that is more than enough. In this room, every heart becomes a mirror. The soul sees not just who is there, but how they loved, and how they still do. There is a cry that never reaches the air, a cry only the soul can utter. It is not made of sound, but of longing. It echoes through the unseen, filling the spaces between bodies and memories. It rises not in bitterness, but in sorrowful recognition. If only I had more time. Not to escape death, but to complete love. The soul remembers suddenly, with piercing clarity, every word left unsaid. The apology postponed, the embrace avoided, the visit cancelled, the call never returned. These moments return like waves, not to torment, but to awaken. And the soul, though unable to return, feels each one in fullness. Faces pass by the casket, and the soul sees them not as they are now, but as they were in the last meeting. That conversation cut short, that silence that hardened. The soul is no longer bound to pride. It would kneel now. It would forgive. It would ask for nothing, except to try again. And yet there is no going back. Time has ended, but mercy has not. The soul aches not for life, but for redemption, not for breath, but for reconciliation. It sees how small the offenses were, and how great the loss became. It does not accuse, it does not despair, it simply knows now. The clarity is total, the chance is past. In some hearts among the mourners, the same ache stirs. A glance full of guilt, a hand on the coffin that lingers longer. The soul feels it, feels the regret rising in them, mirrored in itself, two halves of a story, separated by death, yet joined in grief. What can be done now? Nothing, and yet something. There is a mysterious grace that moves between the living and the dead, a silent offer of peace. The soul, though powerless to act, can still desire. And sometimes that desire touches heaven. A whispered prayer, a tear with truth in it, and suddenly the weight lightens. The unfinished may remain, but not unloved. Among all things the soul longs for in its silent watching, forgiveness stands tallest. Not for crimes of violence or betrayal, but for the slow wounds, the everyday coldness, the unspoken expectations, the love withheld, not out of hate, but fear. The soul, now stripped of pride, aches to reconcile. It does not shout this desire, it breathes it, like incense rising invisibly to heaven. Someone enters the room, a familiar figure. The soul feels a stir, deeper than memory, this one once wounded. A word said in haste, a trust broken quietly. And now they stand here, unsure of why they came. The soul watches, not with resentment, but with a trembling hope. Will they remember me in mercy? They draw near, their hand rests on the wood, their lips part. Perhaps they whisper, perhaps not. But something in their heart moves, a regret, a prayer. The soul feels it, like warmth moving through cold air. And though no words are exchanged, something is released. Forgiveness does not need sound. It travels through intention. The soul also sees the others, those who speak but say nothing. Polished speeches, memorized verses. Their presence is dutiful but hollow. The soul does not resent them. It simply sees. There is no longer need to judge, only a longing that someone, anyone, would say what is true. Then a child speaks, or perhaps someone who never dared to say the words while the soul still breathed. They weep openly, not for show, but from the wound of love. The soul leans in, not to take the grief, but to hold it. That grief is sacred. It is the proof that something holy existed between two lives. And in this moment, something strange happens. The soul begins to forgive, not just others, but itself, for every failure, every harsh word, every closed door. In the light of death, it sees clearly now. Most wounds were born of fear, not malice. The soul understands, and that understanding becomes intercession. It asks heaven to forgive others, to show mercy to those who did not know what they were doing. And it asks to be remembered not as perfect, but as one who loved, even in weakness. Forgiveness in death is not a transaction, it is a release. The soul lets go of who it was, of what it hoped to fix, of every name it once cried for and still whispers now. If you've ever needed to forgive someone who never asked, or prayed that someone, somewhere might forgive you, then let these words settle like a benediction over your heart. Mercy flows in silence, and some pardons arrive after the last breath. There is a moment the saints spoke of, when the Spirit of truth descends, not like thunder, not like fire, but like light pouring through closed eyes. It does not arrive when the body dies, but sometime after, when the soul has seen enough, when it has watched, waited, wept. Then quietly, he enters, not a presence among others, but the presence. The soul, already overwhelmed by memory, is suddenly overwhelmed by clarity, not of events, but of meaning. Every choice, every motive, every silence is brought into the open, not by accusation but illumination. There is no courtroom, there is no defense, only light and the soul within it. Some truths burn, not because they are harsh, but because they are holy. The soul sees not only what it did, but why. Every kindness offered without love, every smile meant to manipulate, every prayer said with distraction, and also every small, unnoticed act of mercy, every silent sacrifice, every time it chose love when no one saw. Nothing is lost, nothing hidden remains hidden. And yet, this is not condemnation, this is cleansing. The Spirit does not come to shame, He comes to heal. And His presence is unlike anything the soul has ever known. No longer does it hover or watch, it now stands before Him. And for the first time since death, the soul is no longer alone. A warmth floods through it, not external, but from within. The very places it once held pain now hold light. The bitterness dissolves, the fear evaporates. The regrets are still remembered, but they are covered, not denied, redeemed. This is the judgment the mystics spoke of, not as punishment, but unveiling. Every intention weighed in mercy, every shadow met by the Lamb. The soul sees who it became and who it was meant to be. And in that gap, it does not despair. It bows, it surrenders, and it finally begins to understand grace. There are no words in this exchange, only knowing, only awe. The Spirit does not ask questions, He already knows. He does not list sins, He already bled for them. He shows the soul its story, the whole of it, and asks only one thing: do you see now how deeply I loved you? And the soul, bathed in truth, weeps, not from fear, but from recognition. This is the hour when light touches every shadow, and the soul begins to see not just its past, but the doorway ahead. It begins like a whisper, so gentle it could be missed. After all the watching, remembering, forgiving, the soul hears it, not with ears, but with being. A voice, soft as breath, clear as crystal. It is time. No force, no command, only invitation. And suddenly the weight of staying becomes heavier than the ache of leaving. The soul looks once more at the room, the faces, the flowers, the hands holding tissues, the eyes that still seek answers. It wants to stay, not from fear, but from love. There is always one more person to comfort, one more goodbye to hope for, but love now must become trust. Presences gather. They are not seen with eyes, but the soul knows them. Some are angelic, bright, gentle, ancient. Others feel familiar. Saints, ancestors, perhaps even the presence of one already waiting beyond. They do not rush the soul. They simply wait, like old friends at the gates of home. The room feels farther now, not because it has changed, but because the soul is loosening. Like a ship pulling from the harbor, it sees them all still, the mourners, the grieving, the unfinished stories. And yet it senses the greater reality rising beyond the veil. The pull is upward, inward, forward, into light. Then comes the choosing. Heaven never drags the soul. The Spirit of truth offers. The soul must answer. Will it let go? Will it cross? Will it trust that the story does not end here, but begins anew, in realms it once only glimpsed in dreams and sacraments? Some souls hesitate. They look back, not out of rebellion, but attachment. A child too young, a wound too deep, a prayer not yet answered. But even these are now wrapped in the hands of the eternal. Nothing will be lost. The soul is promised, what you cannot finish, I will. And then, the yes. It does not need words. It is a movement of the will, a surrender deeper than any vow made on earth. The soul steps, or rather, is carried through the unseen arch. And as it goes, something strange happens. A trace of it remains behind. A memory, A scent, a sudden warmth in the room, a word that enters a mourner's heart without explanation. The soul leaves, but leaves behind a sign, and heaven opens. Some say it ends with the final breath, but the church whispers something older, something holier. There is a space, not measured by clocks, where mercy still moves, a twilight between time and eternity. The saints called it the hora de alma, a final hour after time, when the soul, though detached, still loves, still prays, still hopes. In this sacred window, miracles happen. There are stories, quiet, hidden, often dismissed, of souls appearing in dreams, of sudden reconciliations, of words spoken by the living that heal something beyond. It is as if God, in his tenderness, allows one last act of grace before the gates fully close. The soul, though ready to depart, turns back, not out of need, but intercession. A child who cries out, a wife who forgives too late, a friend who kneels for the first time. The soul, in its final glow, blesses them, and heaven watches. Sometimes two souls meet in this space, one living, one departing, a meeting not of eyes but of essence, a moment of profound peace, unspoken yet unforgettable. Time stands still, forgiveness flows both ways, and eternity gently claims them both. This is the mercy of God, not bound by death, not delayed by distance. Even in loss there is still offering, even in silence there is still voice. And even after the funeral ends, the soul may still be near, praying for your healing. The funeral is not the end. It is the altar where both worlds meet, where sorrow becomes incense and memory becomes prophecy. Some wounds don't bleed, they echo. And some souls don't leave, they linger until the last prayer has been heard. If this journey stirred your spirit, if something deep within you whispered, "This is true," then don't let it pass like a shadow. Subscribe to Bible Stories and Mysteries. Tap the bell to awaken when eternity knocks again. Like this video, if your soul felt seen, and if you believe mercy still moves after death, comment, "The veil is thin."